A young woman, Gabby, is cycling happily along a deserted country road, except it's in VR, and she's actually working out in her living room on a spin machine. She finishes up and gets ready for work, in a great mood and ready to face the day. The coffee vendor has her drink ready, and she gets a text from her boyfriend Dean, wishing her good luck with her pitch. She sets up the meeting room early and waits for everyone to arrive. However, an hour and a half later, nobody's shown up. She's browsing her phone lazily and sees an advert for a win-and-in competition to become the owner of an inn in New Zealand, but dismisses it as a hoax. At 10:30, a crowd of men in suits enter the room and are surprised to see her there, telling her her pitch has been bumped to the following week. She's disheartened, asking her boss Chad if she can go ahead anyway, because she's really got a great idea about affordable green energy that their potential investors will really want to hear. But he's already promised the room to one of his other coworkers and refuses to listen to her. Annoyed, Gabby vents to her boyfriend at dinner that night. She's angry at being kept down by the boys' club and frustrated that they don't listen to her. Dean comforts her, saying he's sure she'll get her shot soon. However, he's already ordered her food for her, and she's disappointed that he's chosen a salad and won't let her have any table bread. She really wants some comfort food after the rubbish day she's had. But he doesn't listen. Then she proposes a new system she's come up with for organizing her closet so that he could leave his clothes at her place. But Dean isn't thrilled about the idea, worried she is moving too fast and claiming love disappears once you start redecorating. He suggests they have a weekend away once he's dealt with his current client, in one of the old inns Gabby loves, and she smiles half-heartedly and agrees. At yoga, Gabby is now venting to her friend Sage about Dean. She compares him to a deer in headlights and wonders how she can get him to commit to her properly. She doesn't want to be stuck in a relationship that isn't going anywhere. Her friend suggests an ultimatum, that's how she got her boyfriend to propose to her. It's been 2.5 years and it's time Gabby got an answer. Gabby isn't sure, but says that if it's meant to be, the universe will send her a sign. The next morning, she turns up at work to find that they are all locked out of the building. Confused, she tries to swipe her access card but it's denied. Chad checks his phone and finds out that the company's investors have pulled out after the meeting last week, that the idea they pitched instead of Gabby's has gone wrong, and that they've gone bust. Left jobless, Gabby is forced to send out resumes, but is met with failure time and again, with many unsuitable positions and people claiming she's overqualified for what she's applying for. She decides that she's going to give Dean an ultimatum that night, because she needs something to go right for her and she believes that it might work. However, when she suggests to him the idea of moving in together so she can establish a home office and go freelance, he stops the conversation. He's happy with the way things are. He wants his own space to decompress and get away from everyone, and wouldn't be happy if they shared an apartment because he likes their relationship the way it is. Gabby appraises him and says it's been 2.5 years and he should know by now what he wants. He's adamant, though, and she shakes her head, realizing he's never going to commit to her, and tells him it's over, walking away and leaving him confused. She knows it's the right thing, though, because Dean is never going to be able to give her what she wants. Over the next few days, Gabby falls into a slump, upset about her boyfriend and her job, trying to keep it together but failing. She rewatches the win-and-in ad she found the other day and decides she's going to enter just for the hell of it. She has to write a 400-word essay explaining why she deserves it, and getting deeper and deeper into a bottle of wine, she types out her childhood trauma and the reason why she's ready to settle down and get away from the corporate life. The next morning, she awakes with a hangover to find out that she's actually won, and screams in joy. She receives the documentation and begins packing to go and check out her new property. Her friend is at her apartment as she talks about her plans to renovate it, make sure it's running, and then come back home and use it to fund her life in San Francisco. Sage doesn't seem to be having the best time with her fiancé, and admits that they're in couples therapy, so Gabby gives her the keys to her place, saying she can stay there when she's away. She takes off with her cases, excited to see what this new adventure has in store for her. The bus drops her off in the middle of nowhere on the side of a deserted road just like the one she cycles down in VR. She's got no reception on her phone, and is trying to find a signal when her case begins to roll down the hill and collides with a car that's driving the other way. She screams as she sees the case fly open and all her clothes land on the dusty road. The owner of the car, a handsome guy, jumps out to help her collect her scattered belongings, and she apologizes profusely, and says that she'll pay for any damage to his vehicle. He asks if she's lost, saying Wellington is still quite a few miles up the freeway, but Gabby asks if this is Beechwood Downs, and when he says it is, she confirms that that's exactly where she should be. He's surprised, appraising her, saying they're more of a work boots type of town and they don't usually get city types. She takes offense, showing him her boots, but he just laughs at her and says her fancy Italian leather won't last 10 minutes. Quickly becoming irritated with the handsome stranger, Gabby says she's going to order a lift, and he says he'll give her a lift if she wants. She says she doesn't accept rides from strangers, and he points out that a Lyft driver is just as much of a stranger as he is. Gabby, though, is resolute, deciding she doesn't want his help, saying she doesn't need a man to swoop in and save her, and takes off down the road with her case alone. He shakes his head in confusion as he watches her go, gets back into his truck and drives off. Some time later, Gabby arrives into town and heads for the local coffee shop, exhausted and in need of a pick-me-up. She meets the proprietors, married couple Peter and Manaki, who are very sweet and ask her all about where she's from. She asks for directions to Bellbird Valley Farm, saying she's the new owner, and is met with a very strange reaction. Manaki drops a plate and Peter's face drops. They exchange a glance and Peter gives her directions and tells her the coffee is on the house as a welcome to the town. Confused, but still optimistic, Gabby heads out to the inn. She finds the sign in the mailbox in a state of disrepair, but the documents are inside just as she was told. Everything has been transferred into her name and the keys are in an envelope waiting for her. However, when she gets to the actual property, everything is in a state of total abandonment. The stairs are broken, the water is stagnant, and everything is completely overgrown. The door falls off when she tries to open it. Inside, it's a total mess and looks like a haunted house. She's exploring it when she hears a sound from another room and goes to investigate. She finds a goat and screams, running back to the entrance. She's greeted by an elegant lady with a bouquet. Her visitor mentions that the goat's name is Gilbert and he thinks he owns the place. She introduces herself as Charlotte and says she's come over to say hello, as she'd heard already that the new owner was in town. She's the owner of the other B&B in town, and the Bellbird used to be her competition, but it fell into disuse after the old lady who ran it died. Her great-grandson organized the internet scam to dump the inn on some unsuspecting person, who would have to deal with it. He lives in Denmark, so Gabby has no chance of finding him. With a fake smile, Charlotte hands Gabby her card and says to give her a call, when she realizes she can't fix the place up. Gabby watches her go, irritated and resolute that she's going to give this a try no matter what. She quickly realizes that the place is uninhabitable. There is no heating, the windows are broken, the fire doesn't work, and the bed collapses when she lies down on it. There's no clean water to the taps, and the old rusty truck on site doesn't have any windows. She needs a new faucet though, as the one in the kitchen has snapped off, so she drives into town, forgetting which side of the road she's meant to be on, and almost crashing several times. At the hardware store, she's browsing for what she needs when she meets the handsome stranger from the roadside again. He points at the faucet in her hand and says it's a classic, hand-brushed brass, and she shouldn't replace it. He could help her restore it. She asks why he's everywhere she goes, and he laughs and says it's a small town, and maybe she's the one who's everywhere he is. She makes a mess in the hardware store, and he bends down to help her clean it up, but she refuses his help again, explaining that she's at the end of a very short tether and doesn't need anyone telling her what to do. He backs off and leaves her to it. At the counter, a man called Norman introduces himself and says he's heard she must be the American that's fixing up Bellbird. Gabby's not surprised that everyone around town seems to know who she is already. She asks him if there are any contractors that do renovations, as at this point, she's pretty sure she's not going to be able to do up the place on her own. Norman heartily recommends one of the local men, and eagerly Gabby asks for his number. Norman calls over her shoulder to the handsome stranger, Jake, and asks him what his number is. Suddenly realizing he's the contractor, Gabby backtracks, not wanting to have anything to do with Jake after her 2 encounters so far. She claims she doesn't need one after all and she'll be just fine, and rushes out of the store. Jake and Norman watch after her, and Jake remarks what a strange girl she is. Gabby stops by the local government building to get the blueprints for the inn. The elderly woman at the desk, Hannah, explains that Bellbird Valley Farm was the best in town back in the day, that nobody ran an inn quite like it. Unfortunately, there was a tragedy that befell the place, but she doesn't want to talk about it and leaves Gabby wondering what happened. At the cafe, she's chatting with Peter and Manaki and brainstorming whether it's possible to restore Bellbird to its former glory. She believes that with her experience in green energy, she can turn it into the zero net emissions project she always dreamed of being able to create. She gets straight into action, bringing Norman over to the Bellbird to make a list of what she'll need. He says he'll give her a 90-day tab on everything, and she's taken aback, asking why he'd be so nice. He says it's just how they do things around Beechwood, and besides, he likes his new nickname, he's never had one before. He trusts that she'll pay him once Bellbird's up and running, and instructs his whole crew to call him Norm from now on. Gabby has a call with Dean, who isn't accepting that they're broken up. He wants her back. She sighs and says they'll discuss it when she's home, even though she really has no intention of getting back together with him. Gabby hears a strange noise upstairs, and thinking back on the rumors of a ghost haunting the inn, speaks firmly to a portrait of the old lady, Mabel, and tells her that she's more than welcome to stay as long as she keeps to herself. At the garden center, Gabby is greeted warmly by Shelley, the owner. They get along immediately, bonding over their love of plants, and Shelley recommends some of her favorites which Gabby is sold on. Charlotte interrupts them, coming over to ask Shelley about some fertilizer, and says she's heard that not only is Gabby doing up the Bellbird, but she also refused Jake's offer of help. Gabby's shocked at the accuracy of the local gossip chain. Charlotte invites her for tea at her own inn that weekend, to tell her all about how it's coming along. Gabby continues doing up the inn, tackling the overgrown garden, setting up new lights, and managing to finally put a collar on Gilbert the goat. She goes to the hardware store and picks up a wrench, which Jake helpfully informs her is the wrong one. She doesn't want to listen to his mansplaining, though, and even when Norm reinforces Jake's opinion, she petulantly sticks with her original choice and heads off to the tea with Charlotte. Both men are still very perplexed at her attitude towards Jake. At the T. Rose house, Charlotte's B&B, Gabby accidentally drives over a prize-winning hybrid white rose. Charlotte is infuriated but puts on a polite face. Gabby steps inside and finds that the interior is extremely old-fashioned, full of creepy dolls and teacups. All the guests are elderly. It seems that the B&B is themed around high tea, which Gabby finds disturbing but which Charlotte insists her guests love. She asks how the renovations are coming along, and Gabby explains her troubles. Charlotte decides to come clean and explain that Mabel's great-grandson promised her he would give her the inn, but then realized that he could free himself of debts with the win and in scam, and went back on his word. She feels she's been robbed of her dream of owning both inns in the town. She makes Gabby an offer and proposes that she pockets the cash and goes back to the States to pick up on her real life. Gabby promises to think about it. The truth is, she's beginning to fall in love with the bellbird, even though it's such a money pit. Back at the garden center, Gabby tries to find some roses to replace the ones at the tea house she accidentally killed. Jake comes into the shop just as Shelley goes to fetch a delivery, and Gabby hides from him. Grinning, he walks around the display and greets her, and she winces that she's been caught. After another embarrassing exchange, Jake departs, wishing her luck with the renovations, just as Shelley re-enters. She thinks Jake might have a crush on Gabby, but Gabby, blushing, says it's impossible because she's a mess every time he's seen her. That's why she tries to avoid him. Shelley insists she's known Jake since they were kids, and since his girlfriend passed away 3 years ago, she's not seen him flirting with anyone. But he acts differently towards Gabby, and there may well be something there. Gabby is secretly pleased, but her feelings about Jake are complicated, so she tries to act indifferent and wave it off. Just then, the local town doctor, Corey, comes in, obviously sweet on Shelley, and Gabby points out that she might have someone of her own to think about instead. Gabby receives a call from her old boss Chad, who says he might have a gig upcoming for her. She doesn't have the chance to say no before he hangs up. She then ignores another call from Dean and goes instead to the coffee shop, where they're hosting a football night with a special menu for the occasion. She finds Jake there and sits down beside him as there's no seats anywhere else. They banter for a bit, but this time, Gabby's focused on the thought that he might be attracted to her, and manages not to make a fool out of herself. Manaki comes over to take their order, and she follows Jake's lead and gets everything on the menu. The pair get to chatting over their meal, and once they get past the initial animosity Gabby had for Jake, they actually get on quite well. She tells him about her life in the city and how she's being won over by the inn. In turn, he talks about his experience abroad and his love of the countryside. There's clearly a strong chemistry between them. He pays for the meal and says she can get him back next time. She asks him what makes him think there'll be a next time, and he says with a twinkle in his eye that she can't stop following him, so he's sure there will be. Gabby comes down with a cold not long after. Shelley arrives at the inn with Corey and says that Manaki mentioned she sneezed and might be coming down with something, so she brought the doctor on a house call. She's brought a kettle to make her hot tea. Soon after, Manaki arrives with his homebrew recipe. Then Jake enters, saying he's going to take a look at her sink for her. She's worried, saying she doesn't have any money to pay him, but they all assure her that they're here to help. She's their friend and they look after their own. They pack her off to bed, and when she wakes up, feeling much better, they're all gone, but Shelley has left the kettle and Jake has fixed the sink for her. She smiles to herself, pleased that it finally works, and really grateful to Jake for his help. A few days later, Gabby is at a fair in town and tells Charlotte she's not going to accept her offer to buy the inn, that she's not ready to give up on it yet. Jake is participating in the fair, sitting on top of a huge bucket of water as people try to throw a ball at a target and dunk him. Gabby thanks him for his help and says she wants to ask him something, but he insists she has to donate first, so she does, and successfully hits the target. Everyone laughs as he's soaked, and he's impressed that she can throw so well. They take a walk and she asks him if he wants to collaborate on the bellbird. She says she's learned that there's a difference between someone thinking she's helpless and someone genuinely just being nice and offering help. He grins and comments that he's learned she doesn't like being told what to do. They seem to have figured out how to act around each other. Jake agrees to the partnership on the inn, asking what she wants to do with it. She says she has her real life to get back to when it's finished, which he scoffs at, but accepts. They shake on a 50/50 agreement on the cost, work, and profit when they sell up. They struggle to find a compromise between Gabby's love of modern things and Jake's tradition. They argue over the fireplace. Gabby wants to replace it with a new one, but Jake is adamant that it's a classic piece and they should restore it. Everyone in town comments on their new partnership, not knowing if they love or hate each other. While they're knocking down a wall, they come across a set of letters embedded in the plaster. Jake takes them fondly and says it's a superstition going back ages, that someone would leave a memento of themselves in a place that meant a lot to them. Gabby teases him about his seriousness, but despite herself is intrigued at the content of the letters and wants to know more. Realizing that there's beauty in historic things, Gabby brings back the old brass faucet that Jake loved and asks if they can put it back in. He grins, happy that she's listening to his ideas. At the garden center, Shelley is watching the pair from the counter when Charlotte appears and finds out that they've bought her fertilizer. Shelley lets slip that Gabby used to have a boyfriend in the States, and Charlotte decides she's going to stir up trouble between Gabby and Jake, as a way of getting them to sell up the inn, despite Shelley begging her not to. At the inn, Gabby and Jake share a moment, grouting around the fireplace, when he puts his hand on hers and helps her straighten her lines. She pauses and takes a breath, feeling the warmth of his skin on hers, and he gazes at her. After a minute, she looks away, flushed, and carries on with the work. But Jake doesn't look away, clearly beginning to really fall in love with her. Despite their differences, they're getting on a lot better while working together, jamming out to music in her old car, and finding out more and more things they like about each other. Jake drives her back to his place to fetch a set of tools. He tells her his grand built it, that he moved there after his last girlfriend Megan passed away. Gabby is uncomfortable, but he's fine, saying he's sure she already knew from someone in town. He came out there to be alone for a while after her death. Gabby apologizes, and there's a minute of poignancy. He says he's accepted it now, though, deciding that the universe must have a plan for everything, and Gabby agrees with a small smile. Back at the inn, Gabby is working on the outside when she thinks she sees a snake and screams, flailing and almost toppling over onto some jagged wood. Jake saves her at the last minute, but she overbalances and falls on top of him. He points out the rope she mistook for a snake and laughingly informs her that there aren't any snakes in New Zealand. They don't get up for a minute, Gabby's still lying on top of him, and the mood shifts into something more romantic. As they're about to act on it, though, Gilbert the goat interrupts them. Gabby catches sight of Jake changing his shirt after working and is impressed with what she sees. She brings out some beers and they sit down together on the porch. He tells her about his love for old buildings and fixing broken things. Somehow making something complete with his hands can make him feel a little less broken inside. Encouraged by his show of vulnerability, Gabby tells him more about how her life was a mess before she came to New Zealand. Jake is by now convinced that he wants her to stay, and says he's going to take her out the following day and show her the real New Zealand. Gabby goes to buy herself some walking shoes in anticipation, and Shelley is badgering her with questions about whether it's a date, but she blushes and says she doesn't know. It's very clear that she hopes it is. She deflects by asking her friend about how it's going with Corey, and Shelley says they're going out the following night. Unbeknownst to them, Charlotte is listening to their conversation. Gabby admits to Shelley that she kind of wants to stay, and Shelley encourages her to, saying how much everyone would love it if she did. They go off to find some other items and leave Gabby's phone unattended. Charlotte takes it and sends a text message to Dean, asking him to fly out to New Zealand. The next day, Gabby and Jake are on their date. They hike through the mountains and out to the sea, and sit on a hillside with a picnic. Jake has packed a bunch of stereotypical Kiwi snacks for her to try out. Gabby is thrilled, and shows him the letters she brought from the inn. They read them out loud to each other, and it turns out they're correspondence between lovers from the early 1900s when the man went off to war. The last letter is left open-ended, and they don't know if he ever came back safe. Jake reassures her that he could well have made it home. Gabby looks down at him lying on his back, and says it's made her really happy working on the inn with him. He replies that it's the happiest he's been in a long time, and they share a gentle kiss. Before the mood can get too serious, though, Gabby jumps up and says she wants to swim, and they run out to the shore, laughing and playing until the sun goes down. When they return, Gabby asks him to stay, and with a meaningful gaze he accepts. However, Gabby then takes a call from Chad, who confirms he's got the funding for the new opportunity, and asks her to come back and work for him starting in 2 weeks. She says she'll think about it, to the disappointment of Jake, who overhears the whole thing. He says she thought she'd discovered something about herself, but it turns out she's soulless and will go back to her old life. Upset, Gabby bites back, accusing him of putting up a wall so he doesn't have to care about anyone. He leaves, and although both of them want to apologize to the other immediately, neither can find the right words to say. When the bellbird is finally finished, it's not the joyous celebration they imagined, but a businesslike nod. Gabby watches Jake leave sadly, and speaks once again to Mabel's portrait, asking her if she's made a mistake. At the open house party, everyone in town is excited for the reopening of the inn. Gabby approaches Jake, and there's a wistful atmosphere between them as they look at the product of their hard work. He asks what happened to the letters, and she says she put them back in the wall where they belong. She's about to apologize for what happened when Dean arrives all of a sudden. Gabby introduces Jake to Dean awkwardly. She calls him her business partner, and Jake nods, not surprised that she's unwilling to disclose the full extent of their relationship to each other. Charlotte runs over, pleased that her plan has worked, and says she's still willing to buy the inn from them, but it looks like her gamble backfired. Dean brought a buyer with him from an Australian company, who are willing to pay top dollar for the property. Brusquely, Jake leads them all into the inn while Charlotte laments her bad luck. Gabby demonstrates all the modern upgrades she's made with her solar power. Jake talks about all the amazing systems she's created while she describes the beautiful fittings and furnishings he's restored, centering on the now working classic fireplace. Their eyes connect, and Gabby says she's learned a lot about the Kiwi way of life, letting Jake know her words are for him. The buyer is extremely impressed and makes a generous offer on the spot. Gabby asks for a minute to discuss it with Jake, hoping that he will talk her out of selling. However, Dean interrupts them asking what's going on, and Jake tells him it's a deal. Shelley chases Jake as he walks away, asking him what he's doing, and he tells her he's letting Gabby go, because that's what she wants. Shelley convinces him to go back inside and talk to her, but then there's a fire alert sent out to all the volunteer firefighters. Most of the assembled group, including Jake, learn that there's a fire at Charlotte's Inn. Everyone rushes over, and Jake goes in to rescue one of the guests, who's unaccounted for. Charlotte rushes inside as soon as they get there, trying to save her belongings. Gabby runs in after her, helping her grab as much as she can, and forcing her to leave before she puts herself in danger. Jake emerges unharmed, carrying the unconscious man, but doesn't say a word to anyone as he walks away. In the kitchen the next day, Gabby firmly tells Dean it's over. She's changed in the last few months, and doesn't want the kind of life she thought she did. He's sad, but this time he accepts her words. At the meeting with the bank, Gabby and Jake are about to sign the deal when Charlotte bursts in. She comes clean, telling them it was all her fault that Dean turned up and begging them not to sell out to the corporation. She puts in a new offer herself from the fire insurance money for the T. Rose house. Gabby, though, refuses her offer and says she doesn't want to sell up at all. She's not going to accept the bank's offer, nor Charlotte's, because she's been ignoring all the signs that she should stay. She wants to wake up every morning in her dream home, and she now realizes that's here at the Bellbird. Charlotte says she's part of the town now, and Gabby hugs her. Jake watches the whole exchange in silence, then gets up to leave, and Gabby asks him what his terms are as her partner. He isn't prepared to talk yet, though, and says he'll let her know. Later, Jake finds Gabby at the Bellbird. She apologizes for turning down such a big deal on his behalf, but he isn't worried about it. He shows her a record of marriage he found in the archives, of the two lovers from the letters. It turns out that the man made it home from the war. He presents her with a letter he's written with his terms, which explain that the Bellbird is his dream home too, and he wants to live there with her and run it together. Overwhelmed, Gabby says she hopes it's a love letter and not a business agreement, and he confirms it, stepping forward and taking her in his arms to sweep her up in a kiss.